following is a conversation. It has the features of any conversation, such as imperfectly expressed thoughts, ill-considered opinions, and the notions of several sleep-deprived brains. Try not to get your stethoscope in a twist about it.
On today's show, we're talking about RFK Jr.'s Health and Human Services report, Make Our Children Healthy Again. But first, how y'all doing? What's going on? Taryn, you're about to do something special?
Yeah. Finishing up family med. Then I'm doing an official pause on core year, and I am going to do a year rotating through pathology. So
A whole year.
I get to do, everybody does some surgical pathology, but then we also have some like selectives. So I can go to areas of path that I think might be related to my career, even if I don't go into pathology. Like right now I'm exploring neurosurgery. And so like I can do a long block in neuropathology and do some additional research time there. And kind of at the core of it, more than anything, it gives me more time to decide what I want to be when I grow up.
So you'll be doing some teaching too as part of that, right?
Yes. Yep.
Dental students? Pathology? Like sometimes I think it's dental students.
It used to be. They changed it.
They changed it.
Now or at least as of last year, now we'll be in like the medical students small group discussions.
Oh, okay.
And the path faculty members will kind of give us the floor to guide and teach people based on the knowledge that like we've acquired and strengthened. But they're still there to like step in if we need them.
Did you do that too?
Yeah, I did it.
Yeah.
I did the whole year.
What tips and tricks do you have for Taryn?
I think I'm just really bad at giving advice. like when people ask for advice.
Hey, where's that email I asked you about a few months ago?
Did you ask me about an email?
I asked you to email me about step exams.
No, I thought we were going to talk about it.
Oh.
I can't email you about it.
Okay.
We have to talk
We
about
have to
it.
talk.
I don't
Okay.
do like writing.
My apologies. That's
Yeah.
on me then.
So my advice is really bad, but it's better out loud than in an email. So
Yeah. Noted.
yeah, I'm particular about the bad advice that I give.
I can't wait to read your patient notes.
You want
Like,
the full
see
advice.
see me for a verbal discussion about
It just
this.
says we talked about redacted, and then we all have to remember it. No, I think maybe I could give advice if you asked a specific question, but we'll find time.
We will.
I was waiting for you to reach out because I was like, okay, you'll reach out, we'll schedule something. So
Classic.
I had you in my mind. I'm like, yeah, one of these days she's gonna ask.
And I remember you saying, "Oh, I'll send you an email." So I was trying not to be overbearing. See, no matter.
This is classic. You can't win.
Yeah.
Well, let's check what the note says. The clinical note.
Oh, oops, we didn't have the dragon to document for us.
Okay, that's my excuse.
There we go. Yeah.
Nice.
So moral of the
I feel like
story
we've-
is we're still always afraid of bothering each other excessively, no matter what walk of life you're in.
Well, after this podcast, like stuff's gonna go down, and we're gonna figure it out.
We are. We are.
Oh. Okay.
I'm going to.
This
Good
is exciting.
Stuff, good stuff. Not like a fight, like
Oh,
I mean, we could fight, but
pathology fight.
yeah. Let's throw eosin and hemoline at each other.
Meandering in the margins of medicine, it's the Shortcoat Podcast.
Weird news,
Fresh views
helpful clues, and interviews.
by students for students.
Subscribe to our weekly show at theshortcoat.com.
Welcome back to the Shortcoat Podcast, the show that gives you an inside look at medical school from the students drinking from that fire hose. It's a production of the University of Iowa Carver College of Medicine. I'm Dave Etler. With me today in the SCP studio, we've got M3 Zay Edgren. Is that right?
Hey.
Is that right?
That's right.
All right. M3 Jeff Goddard.
Hey.
M2 Taryn O'Brian.
Long time no see.
Yeah, I love having you back. Thank you both, Zay and Taryn, for resurfacing. Jeff, I see all the time. So
It's true.
God love him.
Can't get enough of me.
God love him. Shortcoats, if something today totally floats your boat, you've got a killer idea for an upcoming show, hit us up at theshortcoat.com/tell us. Drop your thoughts, brainwaves, epic rants, random weirdness, whatever's rattling around upstairs. We'll crank out a show that's more about you than me, and that's pretty rad, to use the lingo of my generation. Gen X.
Brad.
Are you guys Gen? You guys are Gen
I'm
millennials.
I'm a Zoomer, baby.
You're a Zoomer. I don't know. I can't keep track anymore.
I can't either.
Just assume if they're I'm a millennial.
You're a millennial.
I'm a millennial, but I'm at the tail end.
Yeah.
So everything younger than me is a Zoomer.
I feel like every 3 years, like the cutoffs for different ones, like Zoom, Gen X, Gen Z, it shifts just a little bit, and so I'm in this like no man's land.
It's all right. It's all artificial anyway.
Wait, how old are you?
I am 28.
How old are you?
32.
How old are you?
55.
Okay.
Definitely.
I'm 80 years old on the inside, though. That's got to count for something.
Yeah, it's true.
What happened?
You know, lots of existential panic.
Okay.
That will age you.
Anxiety, it's a hell of a drug.
That will age you.
I'll tell you my rule on Zoomers. If that, like you said, there's some overlap, there's some gray, right? So you can be whatever you want to be. I don't care. But if you can't remember 9/11, you're definitely not a millennial. You don't get props. You're not one of us. That's
what I've heard.
Yeah, that's my rule.
So, like, how much of remembering? Because I remember...
You can remember that it exists.
Okay.
Like,
it
do
was
you
a thing.
remember where you were when it happened? Do you remember
Yeah.
the TV that a teacher turned on? Do you remember that they made you all go home?
I was
all of
homeschooled
that?
at that time. I was young. I remember I was annoying the hell out of my mom because she was trying to watch the news about it. And I was like, excuse me,
Yeah, she's
we're
like-
trying to color here. Priorities, woman.
I'll call you a baby millennial. I'll give you props for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was on my way to work, so you young.
I was on my way to being work.
Yeah.
I was in 3rd grade. We had just gotten into the classroom. I was on the East Coast at the time, so.
Yeah. No, I was on my way to work. I'd stopped at a coffee shop, and somebody next to me was like, "Hell of a thing," and I'm like, "Uh-huh. I'm just here to get my coffee." And then when I got to work, the television was on, and that's when I learned what the guy in the coffee shop was on about. There was no internet back then. I couldn't consult my internet machine. Well, there was, but I didn't have a phone. Couldn't consult my internet machine, my personal internet machine, to find out what was going on.
You had a flip phone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. I had the Razor.
Mm-hmm.
What a classy piece of equipment.
That's right. Any of us want? I thought today maybe we would try, because I was not able to put together a show this week, which has happened more and more lately, which is pissing me off. But anyway, I thought we would try. Does anybody have any hot takes about life? Things that others won't agree with? What are your hot takes? Lately, I've heard these been called "hear me outs" by the young folks. I think that is actually associated with people that one finds sexy, but others wouldn't. But we don't need to do that unless you want to.
I mean, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but I will admit every single time I see a "hear me out" and it's one of those, it's always somebody who's like incredibly like conventionally attractive. I'm like,
yeah,
nobody's going to disagree with you on
I
this,
think
buddy.
it's
I don't know
supposed
what you-
to. I think it's supposed to be like, okay, but hear me out.
It's like, hear me out. And then it's like Jennifer Aniston. Like, yeah, for like 20 years, I've already agreed with you. So
So I've been agonizing over my hot takes for the last 24 hours since you sent us that little group
I know.
message.
Oh, agonizing.
I
I didn't mean to make you agonize.
I have no shortage of hot takes.
Uh-huh. So which one?
But I do have a shortage of hot takes that aren't like breaking the Scoville scale.
Oh.
So
Okay.
I've been trying to think of one that's like mild and appropriate for saying on air that wouldn't require an 8-hour explanation.
Just say
with
it and then it can be redacted.
yeah, honestly,
say your
just
hottest of hot takes.
look, here's what you do. You drop the hot take, then you leave the chat. No explanation. Just move on.
I have to trust that Dave's not going to be angry that I ditched him for months on end and in spitely.
I have
I'm
a hot
not
take.
angry. You had shit to do.
Dave, don't be like that. Come on. Give us your hot take.
You had stuff to do.
Mine will be worse than yours, I guarantee.
Okay. Well, here's a healthcare related one.
Doesn't have to be healthcare related one, but I welcome it.
It's a recent one that like just this past week I discussed this with somebody in like a healthcare setting. I'm like, my hot take is that in all of our advances in being able to manage like risks for like fetal mortality, infant mortality, and the fact that we're able to maintain viability at younger and younger ages, that it could like be contributing to the fact that like our birth rates and like the complication rates are just so astronomically high, because we're then kind of trying to modulate like when women are going into the labor, when we're pulling the trigger like on a C-section. And I mean, medicine is not a perfect science. All of it is just kind of risk modulating and benefits, but I'd be really interested. And part of it's also a question of like, what are the stats that we're seeing kind of in that variability of maternal mortality as compared to the level of critical care that we're able to provide.
So your hot take is, if I can sum up, if I understand correctly,
go for it.
Your hot take is we put a lot of effort into ensuring the survival of premature babies, which I think we can all agree that that's a good thing to do.
We like babies around here.
We like babies. But that may be contributing to downstream problems for
and
kids.
just kind of like that being an element that isn't emphasized enough once somebody gets into that situation of needing to have like a preterm delivery.
Yeah, so the assumption is,
scenario.
now you have, your baby has now progressed beyond prematurity. Now they're considered past that period.
Yeah.
So they're probably healthy.
And here's my disclaimer. I have not done OB-GYN yet, so I truly have no idea what goes on in that area, that realm. I've been on my peds rotation, so I've seen that side of things.
Well, I would think that peds is where the problems would start to show up if there are problems.
Are you suggesting that the earlier and earlier viability of births is leading to maternal complications?
It's more of the fact that it's not unquestioned. Like, for example, it used to be unfathomable that a baby, like a woman that went to preterm labor with a fetus at 27 weeks, would have any chance of being viable or living. Whereas now here with our NICU capabilities, we're like, oh yeah, that can happen. And I just kind of wonder if like our ability to then focus on like, yes, let's preserve this pregnancy, let's support the fetus in getting it delivered and all of that aftercare. And if like throughout the panic of that and just kind of the way our system is set up, if it's kind of pushing some of the more like maternal focused factors out of the way, because like that's kind of our position as physicians, is especially if you're in the OB-GYN realm, is to help manage mom's health. Mom is going to be focused on that baby, understandably, and as she should be. And so it's on us to then kind of come in and try to make sure we're also taking care and controlling for all those other risks.
Can I piggyback off your hot take?
Go for it.
I'm going to double down. And I have, as the kids say, receipts on this one because I've personally done research on it. The OB world, like refining our techniques of obstetrics, of taking care of the mother and the child during the pregnancy, makes marginal benefit in maternal mortality. All of the damage that leads to maternal mortality, almost all of it, is pre-pregnancy. It's the multiple chronic morbidities that patients have before they even get pregnant. If you want to see a benefit to maternal mortality, we need better primary care. That I did a year's worth of research on this and got to publish some stuff on it. So I agree that since the year 2000 in the United States, maternal mortality has doubled, more than doubled. That's an embarrassment.
Wait, since when?
Since the year 2000.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. So in the last 25 years, we have like the number of women that are dying is more than doubled. And percent of the population, not in case somebody was out there misunderstanding. It's just the fact that women have more and more health issues that are not being addressed before they get pregnant in the first place. And that makes it much harder to be pregnant. And that's leading to more and more need to be able to handle these earlier and earlier deliveries. Because, if you've got severe preeclampsia at 25 weeks and your organs are failing, the pregnancy has to end. Whether or not we're going to have a viable child afterwards is, that's hopefully, but like either way, the pregnancy has to end or you're going to die. And so we've been able to make these advancements because of things like that, right? So that's my hot take.
Okay.
I don't want to say that people that are going into OBGYN because they're worried about like taking care of women, like I love that for you. I'm just saying that if you want to really make an impact on maternal mortality, do primary care as an OB, not just obstetric care.
My hot take just comes from a place of like, I haven't done OB yet. It's never been on my radar of things I want to do, but I do see those stats. And so I'm just kind of like, what is going on behind the scenes here? And having just come off of my peds rotation, I'm like, it's incredible what they can do on that end, but yet we're still having these like major maternal complications. So it's kind of like what's happening here. And like you said, your research was just kind of looking at, okay, we've done all of this research into like the delivery aspects and all that stuff, but it's coming down to those comorbidities.
Yeah. A conversation, and you guys are probably much smarter than me in a myriad of areas, but a conversation that I have with patients all the time is American healthcare is phenomenal. Like the best in the world at acute care, right? If you have an acute condition, we can solve that. But we overestimate how much is acute care and underestimate how much is chronic conditions. And it doesn't matter how good we are at acute care, we still can't fix the chronic damage that is done to any organ system, right? So like we can handle the fact that you come in with diabetic ketoacidosis. We can solve that. Again, better than anywhere in the world. But we cannot handle the fact that you have had uncontrolled diabetes for the last 20 years and now your foot falls off. We can't stop that because that's long-term damage to the nerves, to the muscles, to everything. And it's just broken down. Like we'd have to replace all of those parts and we can't do that, right? And so, yeah, the problem with American healthcare isn't whether or not we can handle you when you show up in the emergency department. It's the fact that we haven't taken care of you long-term. We haven't prevented all of that long-term damage, including maternal mortality. This isn't to say that there aren't conditions, and there certainly are, where women aren't listened to during the birth process or all of these other things that do happen. I'm just saying that the long-term damage is a larger percentage of the problem in the United States. That's not even a hot take. That's like a tepid take, and everybody knows those.
Yeah. What about you, Zay? What's your hot take?
The podcast should be canceled and you should be fired.
Oh, damn.
Oh, okay.
You want to talk about?
Tell me more.
That's not my belief.
Oh, okay.
My hot take. I guess I would say. I'm kind of a doomsayer.
Yeah, bring it on.
I feel like this is like it's kind of unpreventable at this point. The world's gonna end.
You think so?
Yeah, I think it's over.
Sometimes I don't know if the world is not going to end. But I do think that things are not looking great for the current arrangement of the world. Like we're gonna like the planet's gonna live on. So the planet's not, it's not gonna look the same.
We just won't live on it, but it will still live.
I think that in the short term we will adapt. It's gonna suck, right? Or it's at least going to be difficult to adapt.
I would say that, not to be too optimistic over here, but there are 8 billion people on this planet. We could wipe out the current order of society, the global order of society, and some people are going to survive. The species as a whole, as long as we're over more than like 100,000, it's probably going to carry on. And there are people that are currently not tapped into global society that meet those numbers, right? Like the uncontacted tribes or whatever in Brazil or in China or whatever. So as a species, we will carry on. Will our society? Fair. We're not looking so hot right now. That's fair.
I mean, societies have risen and fallen throughout history.
But I don't
I really don't want to be that society that somebody has to dig up 5,000.
I don't want to be.
Like,
I don't want that.
I didn't know there was something here. Like that would be bad, but
it's inevitable, isn't it? I mean,
I don't know that it's inevitable.
Well, we can't.
I think it's definitely on the table.
We haven't managed to put together a permanent society ever so far.
That's fair, but we knew Rome was there the whole time, right? Like there was no time where people just forgot that Rome existed and then they dug it up again and like, oh, there was a people here, right?
Yeah.
But there have definitely been societies, whole civilizations where we like dig them up and are like, holy crap, we didn't know they were here.
Yeah.
It is possible. It is on the table, and it terrifies me for no good reason. I don't know that we could, as a society, get to that point where we are completely forgotten because we wipe out the order, and the only people that are left don't have access to computers or technology or whatever, and then we're forgotten.
Yeah.
That would be really weird for me. I don't like that.
Well, I just think that the way the climate's changing and like with how many species go extinct, it's possible that there's like a big domino effect that we can't quite see. And that's why I feel like I'm a doomsday sayer.
That's fair.
Because I think it's possible that too many things are going. But I don't know. I think your optimism helps.
Yeah.
At least that felt like optimism to me.
Yeah.
And what I tell myself, because otherwise I go in a doomsday spiral, is like...
Which clearly Zay is negotiating.
I'm like on a doomsday kind of like floaty free fall, so I'm not panicking, but I am a doomsday sayer.
Okay.
But go ahead.
But it's just like everything... I think all of the issues in the world right now with society, the issues with the environment, just like everything that any of us could kind of point a finger at and say like, this is what's wrong with the world right now. This is the biggest problem. We are in such a connected world now with the internet, social media, that I do think a lot of it is just we're able to be aware of it all at the same time. So all this stuff, like back in the Roman age, if we had the level of technology and knowledge that we do now for like monitoring populations, monitoring like ecosystems, seeing just like historical records, I think we would see like similar levels. We just didn't have that knowledge back then. I mean, back then we were like, aqueducts, this is the best thing since the wheel. Like, and so that's what I tell myself to comfort myself. Every time I go down these doomsday spirals, it's just like we have so much knowledge at our fingertips now and it's like doom scrolling is a real thing. You can't not be on social media and not find it, no matter how much you've tried to cultivate your like digital footprint, you're still going to get one or two things that are like, I can't believe that's happening. That makes me angry. That makes me nervous. Why is no one doing about that?
Yeah. I think so. Yes, and because look, for example, like the maternal mortality rate, right? If in a 25-year period in ancient Rome, the maternal mortality rate had doubled, nobody would have noticed. They didn't have statistics. They didn't have the ability to do epidemiology. Like it wasn't a thing. So you're right. Like we can notice the bad things way better than anybody else. Certainly there are some issues that we're facing that are unprecedented, but not all of the issues that we're facing. But one of the things that does kind of scare me is, so I was in Pompeii a couple of weeks ago, and beautiful experience. And we were looking at some frescoes on the wall, some things that people had painted. And, the Romans had a phenomenal grasp of perspective in their art, right? The dimensions. And then, the recording that I was listening to was like, yeah, and this was lost for 1,500 years. Like nobody, like between this period, around the time that Pompeii went down, not just Pompeii, but, the rest of Rome, and the Renaissance, nobody in Europe was able to make art with this level of perspective, this level of depth to what they were drawing or what they were painting. It's like, holy crap, like 1,500 years, they lost an ability like that. They lost the aqueducts. They lost all of this technology. That I don't want to be a part of. I don't think that it's possible, because I think that the internet, like a cloud server goes down in Arizona, there are still cloud servers in Norway, right? So as long as Norway is still there, technically I think we're probably okay, right? But we can still lose a lot. And that scares me. I don't want to be a part of the generation that facilitates the losing of that much information.
Here's my fantasy. I want to be, so society falls. Everything goes to hell in a handbasket.
That's your fantasy? Okay.
No.
All right, Dave.
That's the setup. There are projects out there that aim to archive the aim to archive human knowledge. So they do things like, on a basic level, they will download the entire contents of Wikipedia, which, by the way, would fit on your phone. All right, there's other things that they're archiving. All right, so society falls. I've already prepared for this because I have downloaded all of this stuff on a computer that's not connected to anything else, right? So it's basically in my basement. Now people have to come to me for knowledge. People have to come to Dave. I will be the knowledge broker. People like, how do I plant a tomato? I don't know. Okay, how do I make an aqueduct? I'll be like, let me look that up for you. That'll be 3 chickens.
But is this like Dictator Dave style,
No,
where you hold the info?
No. I have the info. You barter with me.
Barter.
You barter with me for the.
I will
for
say
the thing that I need.
We sounds like
can help
Dictator Dave.
We can help each other out.
I will say people that have the fantasy of having all of the knowledge grossly underestimate people that have a big rock. Yeah. So, you got that to contend with. I mean, if society falls, libraries will, be abandoned, but they'll still exist. Like books will still be out there. My question is, if you have this computer in your basement, 1, parts that need to be replaced, you can't manufacture those. 2, can you generate electricity for yourself?
I'll have 2
3
computers.
Oh, all right. Okay.
It'll be like
Thinking
a
on your
treadmill
feet, Dave.
computer where you run on it to power it.
Oh,
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Hamster wheel style.
Yeah.
it.
Solar panels. Look, I said this was a fantasy. I haven't thought about it. I have not started on this. Nor have I figured out any of the details.
I need somebody to get me out of this like doomsday spiral. I need another hot take that's not related to this because I'm going down the rabbit hole a lot on this one.
Yours is the one we haven't heard.
Well,
gosh,
my
I'm
hot
next.
take is
Oh,
that
please,
my
Dave.
hot take is that we're gonna be fine in the long run. This is my hot take. We're gonna be fine as a species. We're going to adapt to AI. We're gonna adapt to climate change in some way that's unpredictable at this point. All of these things, if like suddenly America was a true dictatorship, we're gonna adapt to it. It's not gonna be, it's not gonna look like what we're used to it looking like, and that is in itself painful. But this is my hot take. Maybe it's a hopeful hot take.
So during World War II or leading up to World War II, the United States has this vast empire, including the Philippines and all of these islands in the South Pacific, and access to South America. And from these tropical places, we're getting gum that we use to turn into rubber, right?
Yeah.
So Japan cuts off a lot of these lines, and we're like, oh, crap, we're in trouble. We need rubber in order to fuel the war machine. What do? Anybody know?
We make rubber out of petroleum.
We freaking made it in a lab.
Yeah.
Isn't that fantastic? Where you're forced to adapt. Nah, war is bad. Just unequivocally, war bad. But
it's an adaptation to a
the
situation
fact
that was
we do.
unprecedented.
Yeah. We needed access to every civilization on the planet, like all the big colony countries, were fighting each other over bird and bat guano on these like remote alcoves in the middle of the oceans. They could harvest it because they needed it for agriculture. And because it's very nitrogen rich, right? What do we do to get over the fact that we can't access this in enough quantity? We freaking made it in a lab. We shot electricity through a tube, and that turned nitrogen in the air into nitrogen fertilizer. And that is phenomenal. And if you had told somebody 10 years before that that was going to be a thing, that we're just going to blast lightning through the air and we're going to make, food grow, I'd be like, what science fiction are you reading? You know? And yet here we are, right? So I'm on your side on this one. That we do tend to make it work, and there's no way to predict in the ways that we're going to make it work, right?
Yeah.
Like there was no way for you to predict the iPhone in like the 1940s.
Yeah. And this is not to say that it's going to be pleasant.
Oh yeah, they're growing pains. I would agree with that.
It's going to be, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be, in some cases, awful. It's going to, cause problems that we haven't even thought of yet that we'll need to deal with. But on a planetary scale, looking at humanity, we're gonna figure it out.
And I would argue,
or at least we're gonna come to some accommodation with our new, circumstances or whatever. This is why I don't worry too much about that. I mean, I don't love the whole, AI is eliminating entry-level jobs thing that we're seeing. I don't, that's kind of a problem. But as usual, we're gonna come to some sort of accommodation for it, and then that's gonna be normal life. And I don't know, maybe I'm hopelessly naive, but that's how I feel about it.
I read a lot on technology, and I read a lot on current events, which I probably shouldn't. But I think my hot take is on every possible parameter. Let's do the last decade to make this extra easy for people to accept, because the last 5 years have been a little weird. There was COVID. There's we've had some more stuff. But in the last 10 years, the last decade of human existence has been the best decade of human existence ever. Period. Like, bar none. We've never been better on any possible metric. That's
what are some of the metrics that you think might be surprising?
Poverty, for example. What percentage of the world lived in poverty when you were born?
I was born in 99. I would guess 20%.
About 40.
40%.
Yeah. What's it now? And we're talking extreme poverty, like less than $1 a day. People that they're struggling to survive, right? It's less than 10% now.
Wow.
That's billions of people are now no longer living in extreme poverty. Like, half the world is still certainly by United States standards is living in poverty, but there are middle income countries now. That wasn't a thing before. You were talking about the middle class started to exist at the 20th century in the United States. There's a middle class of countries now because we have improved the human condition across the entire globe. That means lower maternal mortality rate in every single country except for 2, and embarrassingly, we're one of them. Lower infant mortality rate, again, in every single country except for 2. Again, we're one of them. That's embarrassing. But almost across every possible metric of human health, human well-being, economic well-being, democracy, which I think I like. I'm a little biased. I grew up in the United States. I like democracy. But all of these metrics, we've been improving. Income inequality, which everybody talks about as inherently bad. As a world, we have improved that. We're as low as we've ever been. Again, because we've got all of these middle-income countries that can now do things like own an iPhone, right? I'm not saying that humanity has solved all the problems. Let's just close shops. We don't need to do anything else. We've got a lot of work to do, but we've never been better. And I think one of my biggest frustrations is that people don't realize that, and they get all doomy. And people that are doomy don't act, right? If you don't think something can be solved, you don't try. The only people that actually attempt to make the world a better place are people that think the world can be better. So I'm over here throwing out my hot takes of it's good. In fact, it's better than it's ever been.
Okay.
And we're gonna make it even better, Dave. Okay. You don't have a choice. We're gonna make it better.
Rebuttal.
A rebuttal?
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say I have a rebuttal because I'd say that's good information. I actually didn't know that poverty's gotten that much better.
And it's not an accident, right? People got together in a room and said, we need to address this. And then they got into other rooms with other people and say, hey, how can we address this? And then we spread from there. This isn't something that just we just fall into, right? When I was born, there wasn't a vaccine for chickenpox. Now there is. In fact, I was one of the first people to be able to get that vaccine because it was invented in Japan just a couple of months after I was born. That's a good thing, right? These are advances that don't happen on accident. They happen because a lot of people are putting in a lot of effort, but they are happening.
And then in the U.S. specifically, is income inequality better or worse than 20 years ago from what you've read?
I'm not 100% sure on the U.S. because I've seen conflicting reports both ways. It's probably not that much better, if it is better at all. It's probably worse than it was. We've been struggling quite a bit with that in the United States. That's fair. But the thing is, the United States represents less than 3% of the... there are 300 million people in the United States. There are 8 billion people on the planet, right? So we're a very, very small piece of this pie. We're less than 1% of this pie.
It's so hard to take yourself out of that bubble, and and it's weird to think of the population of the United States as a bubble for but I mean, it is.
I mean, 300 million people is obviously nothing to shake a stick at. Like, there are a lot of us, but there are 8 billion people on the planet. And so our metrics kind of get dwarfed by the overall picture. So I will grant you, in our society, we're not doing great. China, for example, has worse income inequality than the United States, and it's a huge issue over there right now. But as a planet, we are doing better.
Yeah. No, I think that's why it's reassuring too, because I generally only hear things about the U.S. and like even on,
and that's a problem for everybody in the U.S. I feel like
social media just hones in on the U.S. and they'll be like, "What state do you live in?"
Well, your algorithm
like, I'm not
probably
in a state, bro. I'm like in another country.
Yeah, your algorithm probably is what's doing that. I mean, I see Russian shit on my. I don't know, like if is it good or because I can't understand Russian, but every once in a while I'll get some. For some reason, somehow I get a Russian TikTok, and I'm like, well, that.
Does it?
I don't know what that is, but
does TikTok know you're a spy?
Don't tell.
Dave the Sleeper.
I'm a sleeper agent.
Slept right through the fall of the Berlin Wall. Oops.
I'm going to start dancing.
And I personally see a lot of, because like you said, we're better than we've ever been in a lot of those areas. And I think a lot of the current like mental doomsday stuff is just, now that we're in this era of information where so much is at our fingertips, it's kind of that, how do we bridge this gap of being able to actionably help and improve things where we do see issues? And
so this is my hot take on that. Can I, if I may? I have one last hot take, and then I'll leave the floor. People that are ambitious but not idealistic are bad for society, I think. As I think we can all kind of agree with that. But people that are idealistic but not ambitious are worse because they're not doing anything. One of the absolute worst things that I hear people say, and it's a Gen Z thing and younger mostly, but my generation too, is they talk about all of the things that they're trying to do that are morally just in their minds, and it ends up coming out to I want it to be as if I didn't exist at all, right? Like they're like trying to like minimize their carbon footprint or minimize their online presence or I'm like, you're minimizing yourself into nothing when you have so much capability being born in the United States with all of these resources to do good in the world. I understand that you're trying to minimize the harm, but you have so much potential to do good and you're not. You're just
so you can do those things as long as you're doing maybe
have some ambition
one
to do some
other
good
thing that sort of makes the world a better place.
Like, I'm cool with you saying like, okay, I want to be a vegetarian and I'm going to reduce harm in that way. Cool. That's awesome. Like, what are you doing to make sure that we are limiting factory farms? Like, are you contributing to the technology that's allowing us to grow our meat in a lab or whatever it is that's going to like solve that problem? Or are you just kind of stepping out and not playing the game? Because to quote Teddy Roosevelt a little bit, like the people in the cheat sheets don't really have anything, like they don't have anything to offer us. So what are you doing here? You know, like have some ambition.
Did Teddy Roosevelt say something about cheat sheets?
Cheap seats. Sorry, it's the man in the arena talk. You've heard this one, right? Like it's the guy that gets in the arena that counts. Mm-hmm. Whether if he loses, he tried. If he wins, he done something good in the world. But if he doesn't even get in the arena, who cares? Mm-hmm. Who cares what that guy has to say about anything?
Yeah,
that's a hot take. I'm sorry, all Gen Alpha, Gen Zers out there. If you're listening to us, you're probably trying to go to medical school, which means you have some ambition and trying to do some good in the world.
Well, that was my next question, actually, which is trying to get into medical school and helping people, not to be too, what's the word I'm looking for? Not to be too stereotypical about it, but, is this idea of getting into medical school fulfilling that requirement?
For me, yes. I mean, obviously I'm here, so I believe that, right? But like, I think, again, doctors do harm, right? The medical establishment does harm. I've been blessed to be part of this podcast and have a lot of authors both in and out of the medical field talk about that harm that we've done, as well as what we're doing to try to mitigate that harm. But we also do so much good. And the only reason why we're able to have that damage, that do that harm in the first place, is because we have influence, because we are trying to do something in the world. And I think that net positive, doctors are doing good in the world. So if you're going to medical school because you want the world to be a better place because you were here, good. That's what we need.
Okay.
And even if it's, if it's one patient at a time or it's a community at a time or whatever it is, we need you.
Yeah. I can get behind that. I'm a little biased. I think have spent a lot of time with medical students over the years. I've seen a lot of idealism, and I've seen a lot of, effort into, figuring out what it is to be in medicine and how they can make a positive difference in the world. And yeah, okay. I thought we could, let's move on from hot takes.
It's a little too hot. Burned our fingers a little bit on that one.
For another hot take. On May 22nd, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s Department of Health and Human Services released a report entitled Make Our Children Healthy Again. I'd be surprised if you've read it, to be honest. I bet maybe Jeff has. I don't know. I went through it basically yesterday to sort of pick out some ideas.
I value my mental health too much to read anything that has the name RFK Jr. in it right now.
Well, I'm sorry to diminish your mental health a little bit, but I wanted to, it emerged. I mean, I want to look at it and see if you'd react to some of the claims that it makes. And I should say that it's emerged in the last couple of days that some of the studies cited in the report don't exist, and that the White House has pledged to fix what they call errors in citation and formatting. Most people are reading into that saying, oh, they use ChatGPT to make this report.
Probably.
I don't know. But let's start with...
One of my favorite things about RFK Jr. Is if any of you have read his books, which I don't necessarily recommend, but if you're in for a funny time, as long as you can get over the cringe, he will he'll say something, just off the wall claims, right? And then he'll cite something and you're like, okay. And then you go to the source, and the source directly refutes the thing that he is citing it for. And it is so funny. I've seen it 4 or 5 different times in one page of text. And I'm like, bro, why did you put it in there? You're refuting yourself, but it's fine.
That's the biggest part of this whole misinformation movement. The number of time that I've seen things, where it's refuting the efficacy of the COVID vaccines, or saying, oh, it causes this bad side effect. It is almost in every single place where I've seen something like that and read it to see where are these sources coming from? Where are they getting this information? And it's always hidden behind buried links. And so it's oh, this is bad because of this. A recent study showed this. I go click to see the study here. It takes me to another personal opinion blog post type thing saying the exact same thing. 4 links later, I finally get to the actual publication. Like you said, it actually says the opposite thing. Yeah. And so it's who is behind this stuff where they're just blatantly then interpreting the opposite of what this study said and then propagating that and mass distributing it?
Yeah, no, I was going to ask actually, because you guys brought up something I'd been wondering, which is that I get how some people can be misled, or I get how some people get kind of like it's a competition. Oh, I'm on the team anti-vax, so now I'm going to think that no matter what you say. Mm-hmm. But what I don't get is what's the secret Illuminati society that is propagating this, and why? Is there some sort of reason? Can you guys think of anything? It's who's profiting from spreading that?
It's so banal. It's not satisfying to know the actual answer.
There's an answer.
Yeah, the actual answer is that memes are contagious the same way viruses are contagious, right? Ideas are contagious in the same way that viruses are contagious. The ones that don't have good infection die out. Somebody saying, for example, the COVID vaccine causes plane crashes. Everyone's like, well, that's obviously not true, right? But if you can grab onto one that has just enough of plausibility that triggers that confirmation bias and your in-team thing, and then people start sharing that, they start sharing it because confirmation bias, it makes them feel like they're part of the team. And it also gives them the opportunity to do some boundary maintenance, right? If you don't believe this, you're not actually part of our team. And well, I have to believe that if I'm going to be part of the team. And then people slowly but surely slide down the rabbit hole, right? And the only thing that really seems to get people out of it is either being inoculated beforehand, by the weird ones. I've read several books on how to get people to not trust misinformation, and it turns out it's not possible. Or they get introduced to something that's just stupid, wild, crazy before they were ready for it, and they're like, wait, that's definitely not true. Maybe all of this wasn't true, right? If they're oh, well, maybe the earth is flat and birds aren't real and blah, 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 and then they're you get to the one that doctors are actually killing patients, and like, well, my brother's actually a doctor, and I don't think doctors are killing patients. That forces you to question all of these other things that you have believed, right? But until they get to that point, they're just looking for reasons to believe it, and they share it because it makes them part of the in group.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, but just the first people that did it, the answer is they're a silly goose, or...
I mean, internet trolls have existed since there's been an internet, right? Like, there are people that, like, purposefully post misinformation just to get a rise out of people on posts where nobody's going to believe it, right?
Who are the trolls?
Like
what
the
troll
original,
union do they belong to?
There are organized networks.
There are organized networks. That's totally true. But like, also, a lot of this is just somebody in some guy's basement somewhere that just like happens to share something.
Like a massive website compilation of all the info about anti-vax. There's an anti-vax society or whatever. Like, there's some president or founder of this stuff. That can be a troll. That's like
true. But
somebody.
Those are people that are making money off of it. RFK Jr. spent 20 years making money off of all of this anti-vax stuff. People would pay him to come speak at events. I do know that he was an environmental lawyer, and then somebody paid him a stupid ton of money to bring an anti-vax case through the courts, and he made a lot of money off of that case.
All right, let's look at some of these claims. There has been a decline in children's health driven by poor diet, environmental chemicals, chronic stress, lack of physical activity, and over-medicalization, including puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries for gender dysphoria. I think that last one's a little weird. I don't think there are a lot of children getting surgery for gender dysphoria.
You had me in the first half. I was like, oh, you know what? Yep. Children do need to eat healthier. And then we're like, whoa, RFK, what's going on?
My favorite take was a guy who is now on the inside, so I'm not going to drop any names, but currently works at the FDA. But he made a claim, RFK is like, oh, we need to get these like dyes out of our cereal. And then he's like reading the rest of the ingredients. He's like, it's like 90% sugar. He's like, dude, getting the dye out is not going to make this healthy. Like, this is still bad for your kid. Like, you could take out all of the artificial ingredients and it's literally just like carbs, just like straight glucose. It's still bad for your kid. But, whatever.
Let's try another one. Corporate profitability supersedes the health of children. Today's system far outspends sister nations while delivering far worse outcomes. This phenomenon is largely propelled by corporate capture, in which industry interests dominate and distort scientific literature, legislative actions, academic institutions, regulatory agencies, medical journals, physician organizations, clinical guidelines, and the news media.
All right, I'm going to push back really hard on this one. I'm sorry. This one got me. This one gets me. This is the conspiracy thing again. It's not some hidden cabal. It's the thing that we already know, right? I hate it when patients come, they'll talk about how doctors never want to tell them to do diet and exercise. They just want to throw pills at them. Like, every doctor I've ever met tells you to diet and exercise, and you don't do it, and I'm giving you this pill so your foot doesn't fall off. Like, that's the diabetes thing I get. But like, we know what makes kids healthy. We know that kids need to be outside, that they need to be doing activities, that they need to be eating healthy, but they can't do that. And so the doctor says, well, I can't do any of that for your kid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give him this medicine so his foot doesn't fall off, or so he doesn't pass out because of hypoglycemia because he's unhealthy at this point, right? This is not medicine knows what needs to be done. Medicine can't force you to do these things, nor can it provide the services that somebody might need. If a kid that lives in rural Montana can't access anything but mac and cheese, guess what? They're going to eat nothing but mac and cheese. That's not the kid's fault. That's not the doctor's fault. That's just where we are. And it's not a corporation that's saying like, I'm just going to,
I'm going to force people to eat mac and cheese.
Yeah.
I mean, they want you to eat mac and cheese, but you are a functioning individual and can make decisions. Although we always have to remember that it's cheaper to buy shitty food than it is to buy healthy food. So,
and that's the other thing is just like with diet counseling, it's like we can tell people like, okay, yeah, you really want more fiber in your diet. You want to have more leafy green vegetables you want that to be the majority of your plate. But the reality is they don't taste as good as all the sugar-filled foods. They're not as easy to get. It's difficult, especially as like a medical student, to be meal prepping. Like, everybody has things that they sacrifice in medical school for the sake of maintaining something else. For me, I do not meal prep at all. A bag of instant microwave rice and tortilla chips is frequently lunch or dinner for me. That is not healthy, but I'm like, it is what I can do right now. And so many people get stuck in that. and they're like, well, I'm trying to diet, but like, what can I do for it? And I think much of it also comes down to societally, our food access is not good.
It's interesting. I think back to my my upbringing in the 70s and 80s, and how my mother cooked every night, and we had a meal together all the time. And all of that, part of that at least, was driven by the fact that you could not go to the supermarket and buy a box of lasagna or a pre-made, like a pre-made meal of any sort. Like, you just couldn't do it. It didn't exist, really. Now you can go into a supermarket and buy something that's, ultra processed every night of the week if you want to. And it's really hard to argue with that, especially when, everybody's super busy and
they want it too, right? Well, like, remember 10 years ago, there's been this whole talk that RFK wants to like make school food healthier than it is. One, maybe stop charging kids for that food. But two, Michelle Obama tried to do that back in like 2011 or something. I don't know. I was already out of high school, but I wasn't even in the country. But I heard about it, and everybody was mad about it. Like, they're like, oh, school lunch sucks now. It doesn't taste good and blah, blah, blah. Or, So, like, we've done this before. People don't like it. People don't want to be healthy. That's the problem.
And then we're also cutting funding to schools, and it's like they can't afford to not be doing the mass-produced like chicken tender days.
That reminds me of the Reagan administration. I know. Okay. All right. I know. I'm a little showing my...
Okay, yeah, that one was showing your age, Dave.
Which the Reagan administration got a lot of flack for trying to permit schools to classify ketchup and relish as vegetables. To make it seem like kids got healthier school lunches, when at the same time the Reagan administration was slashing school lunch budgets. So they were like, all right, we're going to slash your lunch budget, but to help you out, we're going to let you think of ketchup and relish as vegetables so that it looks like it's not so bad.
That's cute.
We've always been messing with this with these ideas.
Well, and another thing that like I immediately thought of when you were talking about, like your mom coming home, making like full meals and everything. And something that like I've been wondering about is just we're constantly under more stress, it feels like, from our professional lives, personal lives, trying to juggle everything. But I feel like the average professional work day has gradually gotten longer.
Yeah.
Like, it used to be, and I'm not talking specifically about medicine, but just like, I have a job. It's 9 to 5. I'm going to make sure I have the option to go work a little bit earlier, work a little bit later. But, like, it's kind of the expected 9 to 5. Whereas now doesn't feel adequate. You're constantly under that pressure to be meeting deadlines and doing everything. And I think just our world is sped up.
I think that's
to
why,
a point where we don't have the chance to slow down and have those rituals.
Yeah. I think that's one reason why, Gen Z gets a lot of shit for pushing back on, the amount of time they need to work and work-life balance and all this kind of stuff.
I will say thank you. As a millennial, thank you guys for taking the flak. Like, I'm so glad that we're not that generation anymore. Remember when Gen Z destroyed toilet paper industry or whatever?
It was millennials.
Millennials destroyed everything.
Millennials have destroyed the napkin industry. That was one that I remember. And I remember interviewing somebody here. I'm not important, but at OSEC we used to do these group interviews of new hires, and I remember one of the people, shitting on millennials. These millennials these days, you got to keep an eye on them. They're always, blah, blah, blah. They don't want to work. They don't want to do, like, this is a constant refrain.
I've read newspaper headlines from the 1870s that said the same thing. Kids today don't want to work.
Yeah. Old
people always think kids suck.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they do. And kids always think old people suck. And they do. Guess what?
We all suck.
We all suck all the time. This is who we are. We just suck in slightly different ways, so we can't appreciate each other. So my hot take is that we know how to fix the obesity thing or the unhealthy thing, but we're not going to do it because nobody wants to do it. How do we fix tobacco? we taxed the crap out of it, so it was more and more expensive. We told people you're going to die, and then we hit them with a super high tax, and we went from 45% of every American smoked to under 10%.
Yeah,
that was a huge public health
we
win.
know what to do, I think.
Yeah,
is your
if you
point.
want people to stop drinking so much soda, which is unequivocally unhealthy for you, tax the crap out of it. But when they do that, people get mad.
Yeah.
If you want to say, okay, we're just going to, make fast food stupid expensive on the tax side, it's sin tax, right? We don't want you to do this thing, so we're going to make it more expensive so that fewer people do it. Then their health improves, and everybody's going to get mad at you, so it's not politically tenable, so they're not going to do it. Instead, it's really politically cheap to just say, those darn doctors, they're evil.
Yeah. Here's another one. 10% of children have been diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, with approximately 1 million more children diagnosed in 2022 compared to 2016.
I have strong feelings on this one. Very strong feelings.
You just went through a PEDS rotation. Tell us about your ADHD thoughts.
Oh, it's not even about that. It's even just like personal experience with it. And it's just we have so much information coming into our brains at a given time. So many external points of mental stimulation. And our little gorilla fish brains are struggling to keep up, especially with the demands of society. And it's just we have information coming in 24/7 from all these different areas, and our brain is trying to figure out how to attend to these different buckets of information that we're getting. And so it's understandable that we have screens everywhere. We have the news, we have social media, we have quick rotation of TV show. It's just, there's so much that we encounter on the day to day that's just unavoidable in our society, that ADHD and the increased diagnosis of it is just because we need to find ways to manage how children's brains are naturally reacting to the environment that we're putting them in.
Do you guys think ADHD is an actual disorder, or is it just...
Dave, don't make me crawl over the table there.
Well, I'm not going to say that it's not. What I'm going to suggest is, I've heard this before. I don't know if it's true or not, but is it a disorder, or is it just a mismatch between our current circumstances and what our brains can, or what some brains can actually do?
Dave, are you nearsighted or farsighted?
I am nearsighted.
Nearsighted. How far can you see without your glasses?
Pretty far, but I can't read text.
You can't read text? So in a society before we had written text, would that be a disorder?
Maybe.
I mean,
if I couldn't bring down the gazelle because I couldn't.
If you couldn't bring down the gazelle, sure,
aim properly.
But if you can sit there and basket weave, and
I could adapt. Yeah.
I was gonna say the same thing. It sounded like you said the same thing. Is it a disorder, or is it? And then you described what I might call a disorder.
That's the point, Dave. Is that a disorder is a mismatch between the environment and the condition.
Okay, that universally so.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have atrial fibrillation.
I see what you're getting at. So psychological disorders, even some physical disorders, right? It really doesn't matter that you as a neonate can't make surfactant, which is the thing that allows your lungs to expand so you can breathe, if you're still in the uterus, right?
Right.
It's only a problem if you come out and all of a sudden now you can't breathe and you need to, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of philosophically, I think it's maybe a gray area, but I would say that ADHD is one of those things where it's it's a mismatch, but society exists, so that's
so what you got to do something about it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, I agree. I'm not saying that ADHD is not a disorder. I don't want to put that out there. I just sometimes wonder if it's simply our fallible human brains struggling to work with a system of existence that doesn't always match what we're trying to do in our lives.
I was going to also mention depression, to where most people see it as only bad, but something that I'd heard before about how it's good or why it exists is that if somebody has all their needs met and is done their hunting or whatever,
yeah,
then the best thing they can do is nothing to conserve energy, and that's what depression does is it numbs you and it just makes you lay there and do nothing.
Yeah.
So with ADHD, it's like, oh, hunter brain, there you should be like attentive to everything going on. Maybe it makes you a better hunter in some way. I don't know. That's just something I always hear. But I guess I would see it in a similar light.
So I really like evolutionary everything, I guess. Evolutionary biology, evolutionary psychology, understanding the human condition through the lens of evolution. I think that's a great example, right? Every condition is a variant of normal, right? That has been attempted, if we're going to anthropomorphize evolution, has been attempted, and in order to give more variance to the species. More variance is good because that means that if one type doesn't survive in the future but the other one does, then we've got options, right? We don't want to just have one. Depression is part of the spectrum of arousal. Anxiety is the far side of that spectrum where we're overly aroused all the time, which can have advantages if you live in a place where there's a lot of, tigers or whatever.
Right.
If you don't, not so much, right? Depression is great if you don't live in a place with a lot of tigers, but if there are a lot of tigers, lying there is not super helpful, right? So that variance is actually helpful for a social species, especially to survive. I would say that I don't know that I've met a doctor yet that doesn't think, like every doctor that I've ever met thinks that ADHD and other things like autism spectrum disorder are overdiagnosed in the population for a few reasons. One of them is very benign, which is it's close enough to describing what's going on with this kid, and this kid needs help, and that's something that everybody's going to understand is something that needs help, right? Yeah. That may not actually be what's wrong. Maybe they have fetal alcohol syndrome, which is far more prevalent. That's a very, very common condition, but we don't diagnose it that often because it's, or at least socially, we don't talk about it as much because it's much more socially acceptable to be ADHD or to be ASD, right?
And it's also harder to treat fetal alcohol syndrome because the damage is...
Yeah, well, I mean, it's really hard to treat
different
autism
kind of
spectrum disorder too, right? But if we can say it's not that he has fetal alcohol syndrome or that he has Fragile X or he has X, Y, or whatever, it's he has autism spectrum disorder. Okay, the teacher can handle that. The teacher knows what to do with that, right?
I understand, yeah.
So we overdiagnosed the very common conditions or very known conditions because it's easier to put things in that box and give resources to that kid because of that. That's not the only reason why we have overdiagnosing of conditions, but that's one of them. And I think that's kind of okay, right? It doesn't help us as physicians or epidemiologists who are trying to understand trends, but it certainly helps that one kid. And that's the trade-off is like, how do I make sure this kid gets the help that this kid needs?
And medicine has always done that. I mean, back in the olden days when we thought, everything was a problem with humors, we would diagnose everything as a problem with humors. And then we'd do leeches and whatever. And it didn't always work, but we progressed forward.
We did our best.
Yeah, you're doing your best at all times. And this is true with medicine too. Like everybody's like, oh, we need to fix this about medicine. Well, getting there.
We're working on it. We're trying.
We're doing our best.
Yeah. I do remember the very first patient that I saw. It was in peds. It was like a 4-year-old. And like the mom's like, oh yeah, he's autistic. And I'm almost positive, and the physician concurred based on physiological features. Not all conditions have them, but fetal alcohol syndrome does, right? And we can look at the kid and be like, this is probably what this kid has. But are we going to continue to call it autism spectrum disorder? We're going to continue to put it in his chart that way so that he's getting, billed and taken care of that way? Yes.
And because so that there's a little buy-in from mom.
Yeah. Mom has the buy-in because mom doesn't want to be to blame, right? We keep saying that autism spectrum disorder is something that just happens that we can't necessarily prevent. Fetal alcohol syndrome is something we can definitely prevent. Therefore, you caused it, right? You caused it. So we're blaming the mom.
But by the time you see it, it's too late.
Yeah, it's too late. Like, there's nothing you can do. I don't need you to spend the next 18 years being guilty. I need you to spend the next 18 years taking care of the kid.
Yeah.
So does fetal alcohol syndrome actually present pretty similarly to autism? Because I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Depending on the severity of the condition, there's a lot of overlap. The kid's gonna, they're gonna act out. There's gonna be some intellectual disability. They're gonna be talking less. They're gonna do a lot of the things that you're like, if you didn't have the full vignette, and you couldn't physically see them, you might think, okay, this might be autism spectrum disorder. Unlike a lot of mental conditions, there are a lot of intellectual disabilities out there. A lot of them that get lumped into ASD because it's simple in clinical practice. But fetal alcohol syndrome also has some physical tells. A lot of them don't. So that one is one that you can kind of pick up in clinic and be like, it's probably actually this other thing. But let's just lump it in because we're going to make sure the kid gets the resources that they need. And I think ADHD falls into that bucket a lot. I also think that parents and teachers, because of the world that we have, are struggling to deal with kids. Both the kid is overstimulated and also we're expecting the kids to do something that's really hard for a kid to do, which is sit
and pay attention.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to do.
Yeah.
Well, that's our show. Guess we need to wind it up. Thank you for sitting and bullshitting with me today, Zay, Jeff, and Taryn.
Thank
Always
you.
A pleasure.
And what kind of idiot would I be if I didn't thank you, Shortcoats, for making us a part of your week? If you're new here and you like what you heard today, follow the show wherever fine podcasts are available. The show is made possible by a generous donation by Carver College Medicine Student Government and ongoing support from the Writing and Humanities program. Our music is by Dr. Box and Catmosphere. I'm Dave Etler saying, don't let the bastards get you down. Talk to you in 1 week.
Hi, Shortcoats. Look, life in medical education, life in America, life in the world is often difficult. And I often wish I could help. All I have is this podcast, but in my wildest dreams, you have the support you need to lead a life of your choosing. You deserve to be happy, healthy, and successful in whatever ways you define those words. So if you need support because you've experienced racism, discrimination, harassment, mental health crises, I want you to be able to get the help that you need. And so I'm going to put some links in the show notes to some resources that you can use. But the bottom line is that for what it's worth, I see you. I know you're out there. I wish I could do more. Maybe I can in ways that I don't understand yet or know about. But I see you, and I'm glad you're here, and other people are too.
This Shortcoat podcast is a proud member of the MedEd Media Network. Inspiration, information, and guidance on your journey to medical school and beyond at mededmedia.com.